We need to talk about Israel and Iran. The world just loves to keep spoon-feeding me video topics, huh? Hello again, everyone. Your favorite stickman is back for another video. This time to talk about everything fun that's been going on between Israel, Iran, and now the United States. For those of you who have been following everything, allow me to provide a quick summary of the events so far for those who haven't. Bear with me, please. Here we go. In the early morning hours of Friday, June 13th, Israel launched a series of strikes against Iran, targeting nuclear sites across the country and assassinating military leaders and nuclear scientists in one of the most impressively terrifying ways I've ever seen. Pause for a quick second. I need us all to process how insane it is that Israel is able to detonate a missile in a specific person's apartment from over 2,000 kilometers away. That's just ridiculous. In addition to that, Israel conducted covert sabotage missions on missile and air defense sites across Iran. Iran responded with drone attacks and missiles of their own, some of which impacted the Israeli cities of Tel Aviv and Haifa. I think I said that right, but I could be wrong, so don't come at me in the comments. Since then, both countries have been trading blows, with Israel landing some more significant strikes in and around Tehran, Iran's capital. Where does the US come in? That's a good question, my dear viewer. On Thursday, June 12th, President Donald Trump said he opposed Israeli attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities after a fifth round of negotiations between the US and Iran. After the strikes, Trump told Fox News that the US was aware of Israel's plans ahead of time, but that the US was not involved. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio repeated those same sentiments, as did other members of the Trump administration. However, that sentiment did not last very long. As of Tuesday, June 17th, Trump was already meeting with his cabinet to discuss the possibility of direct US strikes against Iran's nuclear sites. Trump also went on Truth Social to call for, quote, unconditional surrender from Iran. By this point, reports were saying that Trump was back and forth on whether or not striking Iran was the right move. Eventually, though, he was swayed. In the early morning hours of Sunday, June 22nd, the United States bombed Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump claimed that the strikes, quote unquote, obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities. Other top US officials said that the sites, particularly Iran's main site at Fordow, had been severely damaged, but that it was still unclear whether or not Iran possessed some nuclear capabilities. And we all know where things ended up going from there. So that's where we're at, and of course this is a rapidly developing situation. But how did we get here? That's the question I want to answer for you all today. Rather than discussing what has happened in recent weeks and what could happen in the future, I want to take a step back and examine how Israel and Iran went from a friendly relationship to fierce enemies, while also discussing the general hellscape of geopolitics that is the Middle East. Before I get into it, please feel free to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Now let's begin by talking about the early days of Israel and Iran. Full disclosure before I get into all of this, I'm about to summarize just under 70 years of history in 20 or so minutes. If I leave something out that you think should have been mentioned, feel free to comment down below, but I promise it was not intentional, okay? So don't go getting all angry at me in the comments. As many of us probably know, the modern day country of Israel was established in 1948. There's plenty of history and of course plenty of controversy behind Israel first being established, but that's not really what we're here to talk about today. Maybe it'll be a topic for another video. Anyways, even before the nation state of Israel was officially recognized, fighting was already breaking out in the region between Jewish and Arab groups in what was then known as Palestine. According to the US Department of State, quote, fighting began with attacks by irregular bands of Palestinian Arabs attached to local units of the Arab Liberation Army composed of volunteers from Palestine and neighboring Arab countries. These groups launched their attacks against Jewish cities, settlements, and armed forces. The Jewish forces were composed of the Haganah, the underground militia of the Jewish community in Palestine, and two small irregular groups, the Irgun and Lehi. Again, don't know if I said any of those correctly, so I apologize. The goal of the Arabs was initially to block the partition resolution and to prevent the establishment of the Jewish state. The Jews, on the other hand, hoped to gain control over the territory allotted to them under the partition plan. Fighting didn't really kick off, though, until Israel declared its independence on May 14, 1948. At that point, the first of many Arab-Israeli wars broke out, with troops from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and Iraq all fighting against Israel. Saudi Arabia even sent a formation to fight, but under Egyptian leadership. Why does this matter? Well, you may have noticed that I didn't mention Iran. Under the command of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran was not directly involved in the conflict, unlike many other Arab states. In fact, Iran went as far as to officially recognize Israel in 1950. Iran underwent multiple political uprisings in the years following this recognition. Regardless of that, though, relations between Israel and Iran during this time remained fairly stable overall. This feels like a good time to make note of something, too. Those political uprisings I mentioned just now weren't natural. In 1953, the CIA orchestrated a coup d'etat in Iran to overthrow their democratically elected leader, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. This coup cemented Pahlavi's power in Iran for decades. The CIA even officially acknowledged their role in the coup in 2023. It was conducted for a variety of reasons, but mainly to ensure a pro-Western government remained in Iran and to protect Western oil interests. I'm bringing this up because 1, it's obviously an important part of the history, and 2, because it shows that just because the Iranian government liked the US and Israel, that doesn't necessarily mean its people at the time did. But anyways, I just mentioned that Israel and Iran maintained a fairly stable relationship, and that's true overall. For example, both Israel and Iran were aligned with the United States for most of the Cold War and generally worked against Soviet influence in the Middle East. The countries also had multiple economic ties, with Israel assisting Iran with agriculture and infrastructure, while Iran provided Israel with oil exports. According to the book Treacherous Alliance: The Secret Dealings of Israel, Iran, and the United States by Trita Parsi, in the 1960s and 1970s, Iran provided Israel with anywhere between 70 to 90% of Israel's crude oil needs. That's pretty absurd, and it's obviously a very far cry from what is currently going on between these two countries. So what happened? What went wrong? It's time to fast forward to the year 1979. By February of 1979, Iran had officially transitioned into a new form of government after rising tensions between the Shah's government and Iranian citizens, which were sparked by economic inequality, political repression, and cultural backlash against the Shah's pro-Western stances. Mass protests and strikes culminated in his exile from the country in January 1979. But what happened next? Well, allow me to introduce you to Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. If you haven't noticed by now, I don't know how to say some of these names, so I'm doing my best. Okay? Khomeini was originally imprisoned by the Shah way back in 1963 for speaking out against the Shah's regime, but this led to riots. As an alternative, the Shah exiled Khomeini to Turkey in 1964, where he spent some time before settling in Iraq, as well as spending some time in France. Once the Iranian Revolution took place though, the Shah ended up fleeing Iran with his family, and Khomeini returned to the country in 1979, with many eager Iranian revolutionaries wanting to establish an Islamic government under Khomeini's leadership. So that's exactly what they did. I'm simplifying a bit, but once Khomeini returned, the modern-day Islamic Republic of Iran was born. Now, you may remember that I mentioned just a minute ago that many Iranians were unhappy with the Shah's pro-Western stances, which is part of what led to mass protests. Well, Ayatollah Khomeini was no different. He was not a fan of the West at all, going as far as labeling Israel as Little Satan and the United States as Great Satan. Anyways, at this point in the timeline, the newly formed Islamic Republic severs all ties with Israel, a stark difference from Israel's relationship with Iran under the Shah's rule just a few years prior. Additionally, in February 1979, Iran announced that it would no longer be recognizing Israel as a legitimate nation. Israeli diplomats in Tehran were expelled, the Israeli embassy in Tehran was closed, and Iran's new government granted the empty embassy building to the Palestine Liberation Organization, also known as the PLO. Israel responded with the same action, severing all ties with Iran. Interestingly though, things didn't unfold the same way for the United States. Rather than severing ties with Iran right as Ayatollah Khomeini came into power, the US kept their embassy in Tehran, hoping to maintain their presence in the region and keep diplomatic ties with the new Iranian government. But of course, that didn't end up happening. And why is that? Largely because of a little thing known as the Iranian hostage crisis. On November 4th, 1979, Iranian students who were angered by the Shah fleeing the country seized the US embassy in Iran, taking more than 50 Americans who were staffed at the embassy hostage. The American diplomats were held there for 444 days. About midway through the crisis, President Jimmy Carter and his administration announced that the United States was severing all diplomatic ties with Iran on April 7, 1980. No formal diplomatic relations have been restored between the US and Iran since that point. However, you may remember that I mentioned that Israel severed all ties with Iran. Well, I technically lied to you. I'm sorry, okay? It was just for the script. You'll understand why in a second. In September of 1980, the Iran-Iraq War broke out. Under the rule of Saddam Hussein, Iraq wanted to annex oil-rich regions of Iran, while also establishing regional dominance following the Iranian Revolution. This war was extremely brutal for both countries and for the region in general, but I'm not bringing it up to dive into any extreme details about it. Instead, what you need to know is that while Israel publicly severed ties with Iran after Ayatollah Khomeini came into power, some underground deals were still ongoing. You see, while the US and Israel weren't too happy with what had happened to Iran's government, they saw Iraq as a more immediate threat. Additionally, the US wanted to counter Soviet influence in the Middle East, so they kept some back-channel communications going. Enter the the Iran-Contra affair. Under the Reagan administration, the United States engaged in secret arms deals with the new Iranian government from 1981 to 1986. For the Reagan admin, a large part of doing this was to free US hostages being held by Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed militia group based out of Lebanon. However, there was a congressional ban on arms sales to Iran, so they had to find another way to do so. Here's where Israel came into play and acted as the middleman, distributing various arms to Iran from their own stockpile of weapons, which the US later replenished. As a result, the United States freed their hostages and made a profit off of their arms sales, which they then used to fund rebels in Nicaragua. But that's a story for another day. Israel grew even closer to the United States, and Iran gained some much needed firepower to fight back against their stronger neighbor in Iraq. Eventually, this deal was found out about and sparked some pretty major controversy for the Reagan administration, but we don't need to go into that too much. The war between Iraq and Iran wrapped up in 1988, and Iran's Islamic government remained. So what happened next? Things only continued to escalate from there. If you thought the last two sections of this video were chaotic, then strap in, because this is going to get even messier. Let's get into it. The history of Iran's nuclear program stretches all the way back to the 1950s. However, it wasn't until the mid to late 1990s that Israel became increasingly concerned with the possibility that Iran was getting close to building nuclear warheads. While the exact date it was created is unknown, Iran ran a covert project in the late 1990s and early 2000s known as the Ahmad Plan. The goal of this project was to test and develop nuclear weapons, and to ultimately build an arsenal of 5 nuclear weapons by 2004. Going further, Iran Watch writes, quote, "Under the Ahmad Plan, Iran acquired several foreign weapon designs and refined them to develop its own, conducted conventional explosives testing, carried out casting and machining experiments with surrogate materials, and studied how to integrate the warhead with a Shahab-3 missile. The main element that Iran lacked during this program was the weapons-grade uranium or plutonium to fuel the bomb." Eventually, Israel, the United States, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, also known as the IAEA, all found out about this, and it raised some eyebrows to say the least. In the summer of 2002, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, a coalition of several Iranian dissident groups, revealed the existence of 2 previously undisclosed Iranian nuclear sites, a uranium enrichment facility in Natanz and a heavy water production plant in Iraq. Due to their dual-use nature, these sites could have served both civilian nuclear energy purposes and have potential applications in developing nuclear weapons. The fact that Iran hid the existence of these sites, though, raised international suspicions about their intended use. Their discovery, along with the United States invading Iraq in 2003 under the pretense that they may have nuclear weapons, led to Iran stopping the Ahmad Plan in late 2003. But obviously, their nuclear aspirations didn't end there. Instead, they went even more covert. As Iran Watch reports, quote, "The covert stream, smaller in scale than before but still constituting a coordinated effort, involved sensitive research and development work aimed at filling in technical gaps related to weapon development and preserving the knowledge gained under the Ahmad Plan. According to the IAEA, activities such as computing modeling of implosion, compression, and nuclear yield continued until 2009. But Iran's nuclear research wasn't the only thing increasing tensions with Israel. In 2006, the Israel-Lebanon war broke out after confrontations between Israel and Hezbollah escalated significantly, and this was honestly a long time coming. Hezbollah was founded back in 1982 with Iranian support, and had continuously received funding from Iran since. In that same year, Israel began an 18-year-long occupation of southern Lebanon. By the 1990s, Hezbollah was conducting suicide bombings and rocket strikes against Israeli forces there, as well as attacks into northern Israel. Meanwhile, Israel itself launched multiple wartime operations against Hezbollah during their occupation, including Operation Accountability, which was a part of the 7 Days War in 1993, and Operation Grapes of Wrath in 1997. All of this is to say, tensions were escalating with Iran over a very long period of time, albeit it was all indirect escalations. But of course, Hezbollah was far from the only group Iran was supporting in the region. Over the years and decades, Iran had been increasing its regional reach, growing closer with the likes of the Assad regime in Syria, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Houthis in Yemen, and various paramilitary groups in Iraq. These groups, in combination with Hezbollah, formed what soon came to be known as Iran's axis of resistance. It could very easily be argued that after the 2006 Israel-Lebanon war, the axis was cemented as a recognized coalition. All of those groups, over decades of time, received foundational support and funding from Iran's government, and as time has gone on, tensions have only continued to increase. As we get into the years closer to the present day, Israel's conflicts with Iran's proxies only continue to intensify. In 2011, anti-government protests sparked the onset of the brutal Syrian civil war, in which Iran's government sent IRGC troops to Syria to help Assad's regime in their fight against rebels, while also attempting to secure supply routes to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Unsurprisingly, Israel wasn't a huge fan of this, as these Iranian troops were very close to their border in the Golan Heights. As the conflict continued to escalate, Israel got involved through a series of hundreds of airstrikes across the war. One of the first major airstrikes against Iran came in 2013, when the Israeli Air Force struck an Iranian weapons convoy that was allegedly bound for Hezbollah in Lebanon. Tensions only continued to rise, and as the Syrian civil war continued on, so did Israel's indirect involvement. On April 9, 2018, the Israeli Air Force targeted a Syrian airbase that was hosting Iranian forces, specifically those from the IRGC and their Quds force. Another name I don't know if I'm saying correctly, sorry. Iran was allegedly using the base as a command center and logistics hub for operations in Syria, including drone and missile activities. After the strikes, Iranian state media and the IRGC confirmed 7 IRGC personnel were killed, including Colonel Reza Soltani, a senior official in the Quds force. This strike was considered a significant escalation in tensions between Israel and Iran, as it directly targeted Iranian military personnel and infrastructure, moving beyond Israel's earlier focus of weapons convoys. The attack was a response to a February 10, 2018 incident where an Iranian drone, launched from the same base that was targeted, infiltrated Israeli airspace and was shot down, prompting Israel to strike Syrian and Iranian targets. The April 2018 strike marked a rare instance of direct casualties among IRGC forces, signaling Israel's willingness to confront Iranian forces head-on in Syria. But to no one's surprise, this was far from the only event taking place during those years. You may have noticed a trend in this video by now, which is that Iran's race for nuclear weapons has been a pretty consistent thread to follow over the past 60 or so years. Granted, Israel didn't really perceive it as a threat until after the Islamic Revolution, but you get the point. Anyways, in 2011, multilateral nuclear negotiations began with Iran, where the US, China, the UK, Russia, and Germany came together in an attempt to prevent Iran's nuclear program from coming to fruition. These talks continued for 4 years, culminating in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the JCPOA or simply as the Iran Deal, in September of 2015. According to the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, the JCPOA, quote, called for greater international monitoring of Iranian nuclear facilities, an Iranian pledge to not develop weapons-grade nuclear material, and sanctions relief for Iran's economy. Israel was not a big fan of this deal, to say the least. In fact, they went as far as denouncing the agreement, claiming that Iran would simply violate the deal or wait until its provisions ended in 10 to 15 years. Donald Trump seemed to agree with Israel. During his first term way back in 2018, Trump followed through on a campaign promise and pulled the United States out of the JCPOA, while also reimposing heavy economic sanctions on Iran. So Iran began enriching low-grade uranium again, as well as enriching beyond medical-grade uranium at its underground Fordo facility. Fast forward to January 2020, the United States assassinates the head of Iran's Quds force and arguably the second most powerful figure in all of Iran, Qasem Soleimani. The US justified this strike by claiming that Soleimani was actively developing plans for attack on American personnel in Iraq and across the Middle East. Iran responded by announcing that it would no longer place limits on its uranium enrichment, effectively killing whatever was left of a nuclear deal. In 2021, former President Joe Biden wanted to renegotiate a new type of deal with Iran, but numerous roadblocks resulted in the move never really gaining traction by the end of his term. Finally, we get to 2023, when an attack by Hamas on Israel led to the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip. There were rumors that Iran was behind the October 7th attacks, and it would be hard to argue that they didn't at least have advanced knowledge of the attacks beforehand, or that they didn't support Hamas's actions, given the support that they have given the group in the past. However, at the time, former US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that there was no direct evidence Iran was involved. Additionally, while it may not mean that much, Iran's Ayatollah denied any direct role in the attack as well. Iran's axis of resistance has taken a hard hit over the past couple of years, with both Hamas and Hezbollah being heavy targets of Israeli military campaigns, and the Assad regime falling in Syria at the end of 2024. With that, we have now reached the present day, and I think it's finally time to wrap things up here. The Middle East has long been a place of unfortunate tension, chaos, and war. There are obvious reasons for this, reasons that I couldn't fully get into in this video, but I may explore them in the future. As of now, we don't know where the situation between Israel, Iran, and the United States may go. The ceasefire may hold, Iran may begin enriching more uranium, who knows? But the purpose of this video was to explain how nearly 70 years of history have culminated in the recent strikes on Iran by Israel and the United States. It is a complex history, and there are some things that I likely missed. With that being said, said, if you think there's something I definitely should have mentioned, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Additionally, if you're interested in learning more about this topic, feel free to check out my source list in the description. I'd highly recommend doing so if you have the time, as it may shine some more light on some of the things that I talked about in this video. That's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed or learned something new, please feel free to like and subscribe. More videos coming soon. Also, sorry for the slight delay on this video, there was just a lot going on and I didn't have time to get it done. Regardless, thank you so much for watching and for your continued support. I really appreciate it. Hope I see you next time. Take care.